I work full-time as a doctor, run this YouTube channel, train consistently, and I'm always trying to improve. On paper, that sounds like a recipe for burnout. Long hospital shifts, filming and editing outside of work, and having a life on top of that. If burnout was purely about workload, I should be exhausted, and it's not because I work less. It's not because I've mastered balance either. So why do some people burn out quickly while others sustain high output for years? Most people assume it's about workload, that the solution is simply to do less. But what actually protects you isn't doing less. What protects you is the quality of your recovery, and most people rest in ways that never truly restore them. So in this video, I'll break down 6 forms of recovery within what I call the reset system, so you can work hard without constantly feeling drained. So most people assume burnout comes from working long hours, but some people can work 10 to 12-hour days and feel fine, while others burn out after 6. So time alone doesn't explain it. The real difference comes from whether your brain ever truly switches off. You can be sitting on the couch, but if you're still thinking about unfinished tasks or tomorrow's to-do list, your stress system stays active. That low-level activation keeps cortisol elevated and blocks real recovery. Your body might be still, but your nervous system isn't. So the solution is to build what I call hard cognitive off-ramps. This could be a fixed rule for when work ends, writing down your first task for tomorrow, or a short shutdown ritual, something that clearly signals the day is done. Without that boundary, even sleep, passive breaks, or exercise won't fully protect you from burnout. For me, at the end of each work block, I log what I did in my habit tracker, then I deliberately switch to the next activity like reading, training, practicing piano, or anything else. It's a simple signal to my brain that work is over, and without that psychological detachment, none of the other recovery methods really work. So in the first point, we saw that if your brain never fully switches off, physical rest doesn't truly restore you. The next point builds on that, because even when you step away from work, your mind might still be juggling dozens of small decisions without you realizing it. And that's why you can feel exhausted at the end of the day, even when you haven't done much physically. In most cases, it's not your body that's drained, it's your brain. Every small choice you make, from what to eat to which task to start next, slowly depletes mental energy. This is known as decision fatigue. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, control, and problem solving, has limited capacity. When it's overused, everything feels harder, even simple tasks require more effort. The problem is, even while you're physically resting, your brain still evaluates notifications, choosing what to click, what to watch, how to respond. Those constant micro decisions keep your systems active, so your mind never fully rests. So the solution is to create decision-free rest periods, time where your brain doesn't need to choose, evaluate, or respond. Practically, that means building routines that run automatically, repeating familiar activities like workouts, reading, or practicing a hobby, and following the same evening wind down each day so you're not constantly deciding what's next. When you reduce decisions, your nervous system finally has space to settle. Your body may have been still before, and now your mind is too. Mastering this form of rest lays the foundation for the next type of recovery we'll cover, because without this kind of mental quiet, even passive downtime won't stop burnout from building. And before the next point, if you ever feel like the day just disappears and you're not sure where the time went, that was me too. Even as a doctor, a productivity coach, and someone who has spent years studying how high performers use their time, I was still getting distracted, losing hours, and not making the progress I wanted on the things that actually mattered to me. So I built an app called Superhuman that showed me exactly what was eating my time, made me reflect on it honestly, and nudged me towards the goals I kept putting off. And it's what helps me manage working full-time as a doctor, running a YouTube channel, coaching, training, and still having a personal life. Superhuman builds a completely personalized productivity system around you specifically, your goals, your schedule, your distractions, your patterns. It gives you daily briefings, honest reflections, habit tracking, and high leverage tasks chosen specifically for where you are in your journey. And this means that as you progress, the whole system evolves with you, getting more ambitious, more specific, and more tailored the longer you use it. If that sounds like something you need, the link to download Superhuman is in the description below. Thank you, and now back to the video. So we've talked about decision-free rest and giving your brain a break from constant choices, but even after that, many people still feel mentally drained. That's because removing decisions is only step one. Your brain also needs activities that actively restore its ability to focus and think clearly. There's a difference between switching off and replenishing. Doing something low effort might pause the strain, but it doesn't automatically rebuild the mental energy you've used up. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain I mentioned involved in planning, focus, and self-control, can't operate at high intensity all day. After hours of directing attention and making decisions, it needs time where that control is reduced and your thinking becomes less effortful. And that's where active restoration comes in. When you play an instrument, take a slow walk, stretch, or journal without a goal, your brain shifts out of achievement mode. You're engaged, but you're not trying to optimize or solve anything. And that shift matters. It lowers the constant demand for control and allows other mental processes to come online, which supports clarity and creativity. It's like constantly steering a car versus briefly letting it cruise. And when you build this in regularly, you notice something simple. Starting work next day feels easier. You're less irritable, you procrastinate less, tasks don't feel heavy for no clear reason. And once you understand that, the next question becomes more important. How much recovery do you actually need relative to the intensity of your work? Because mismatch is where burnout really begins. The simple answer is that the more mentally intense your work is, the more intentional your recovery needs to be. Deep work requires deep recovery. High focus states aren't neutral. When you're studying, writing, or analyzing, your brain activates stress symptoms similar to physical exertion. Your heart rate shifts, cortisol rises, and energy use increases. And that's not a bad thing. That's what focus is. But if you stack intense sessions without proper breaks, mental fatigue builds. Your brain runs on ultradian rhythms, natural cycles of roughly 90 minutes that influence alertness and performance. After about 60 to 90 minutes of deep concentration, efficiency drops. You reread the same sentence, attention drifts, simple tasks feel heavier than they should. Most ambitious people respond by pushing through with more caffeine or more willpower, but usually the work just gets slower, even though you're trying harder. So I'm sure you've figured this out by now, but the smarter approach is to work in cycles, 60 to 90 minutes of real focus, followed by 10 to 20 minutes of a proper break. No scrolling, no new input, just step away. When you work this way, focus becomes sustainable because you're recovering before the next push. That's how you reduce burnout long term, not by squeezing more out of each day, but by respecting the rhythm your brain naturally runs on. And now the next point is a deeper layer. For some people, burnout isn't a scheduling problem or a time management problem, it's an identity problem. This is when productivity isn't just something you do, it becomes who you are. So when work stops, your sense of value drops with it. I've experienced this myself. I used to feel uncomfortable resting, guilty taking a break. There was a quiet belief in my head that said, if I'm not producing, I'm falling behind. But when your self-worth is tied only to output, rest feels like failure. So even when you're not working, you're tense, you're checking, you're mentally rehearsing what you should be doing. That creates constant low-level pressure because you're never truly off. And recovery doesn't happen in that state. It only happens when the pressure actually drops, both physically and mentally. So the shift is this. Rest isn't a reward for exhaustion. It's a requirement for being human. It's not laziness, it's maintenance. The same way you don't earn sleep. You don't have to earn the right to switch off. And practically, that means building parts of your week where your value isn't measured by output. Time where you're not tracking, optimizing, or improving. Just being. That could be walking without counting steps, spending time with friends without checking your phone, or reading without caring how much you finish. Simply doing something because you want to. The moment you stop trying to extract value from every hour, you signal to your brain that it's safe to recover. And this brings us to the final principle of the reset system, which is that rest isn't random. It's a structured system that actively protects you from burnout. Most people wait until exhaustion hits and hope naps, scrolling, or random breaks will fix it. We both know that rarely works. Real recovery happens when rest is intentional and proportional to the effort you've put in. It balances intense focus with deliberate downtime. That means closing open tasks, taking genuine decision-free breaks, following natural focus cycles, and protecting your identity so your value isn't tied to output. This looks like daily shutdown rituals, structured focus and recovery blocks, and low-pressure activities like walking, reading, or practicing music. Things that actually restore mental energy. The key is consistency. When these habits are built into your week, rest stops being a pause between tasks and becomes a system that keeps you sharp. That's what makes burnout unlikely over the long term. But here's the next problem. You might be able to start the reset system, but sticking with it for weeks and months is where most people struggle. Getting started is easy. Staying consistent long term is the hard part. I've been there too, with studying, YouTube, and even the gym. I'd start strong, then fall off. But over the past few years, I've learned how to build habits that actually stick and produce real results. And in this video here, I break down exactly how to stay consistent no matter how busy or low energy you feel. So click it to make consistency effortless, even on your hardest days.